AITA for ruining my husband's life after discovering his betrayal was worse than I could have imagined. I'll never forget the moment I found the email. My hands were shaking as I stared at the screen, my coffee going cold on the kitchen counter. It was a single line buried in a thread I wasn't supposed to see. "She's clueless. We're almost done moving the funds." My husband, Mark, had left his laptop open, something he never did. That one sentence cracked my world open, and what I uncovered over the next 3 weeks turned my life into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I'm 34, a graphic designer, married to Mark for 7 years. We met in college, bonded over late-night study sessions and cheap ramen. He was charming, ambitious, the kind of guy who could talk his way into or out of anything. We built a life together, nice house in the suburbs, vacations in Cancun, even talked about kids someday. But there were cracks. He'd been distant lately, working late, guarded about his phone. I thought maybe he was cheating. I was wrong. It was so much worse. That email was from someone named L. Carter. No context, no explanation, just that damning line. I didn't confront Mark right away. Something told me to dig deeper, to play dumb, so I did. I smiled at him over dinner that night, laughed at his stupid jokes, and pretended everything was fine while my stomach churned. After he went to bed, I started snooping. His laptop was locked, but I knew his password, his mom's maiden name and our anniversary. Amateur. I found a hidden folder labeled Taxes 2023. Inside were spreadsheets, bank statements, and emails that made my blood run cold. Mark had been siphoning money from our joint savings, $120,000 over 2 years. Worse, he'd opened credit cards in my name, maxed them out, and funneled the cash into an offshore account. The emails with Carter mentioned the plan and keeping her in the dark until it's finalized. I felt like I was reading a script for a thriller, except I was the idiot protagonist about to lose everything. The next morning, I called in sick and drove to a coffee shop to think. I couldn't go to the police yet. I had no proof, just screenshots on my phone. I needed more. That's when I noticed the name. Carter again, this time on a business card tucked in Mark's car console when I borrowed it to run errands. Laura Carter, financial advisor. Her office was 20 minutes away. I didn't think, I just drove. Laura's office was sleek, all glass and chrome, the kind of place that screams money. I lied to the receptionist, said I was a client, and got 5 minutes with Laura. She was polished, mid-40s, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I played the clueless wife, asking vague questions about investment options. She was cagey, but I caught her off guard when I mentioned Mark's name. Her face twitched just for a second. "Oh, Mark's a valued client," she said too quickly. "We're working on some long-term strategies." I left with her card and a gut feeling she was in on it. That night I couldn't sleep. Mark was snoring beside me, oblivious, while I lay there imagining him laughing as he drained our accounts. I started tracking everything. His schedule, his calls, even his car's GPS history. He was meeting Laura twice a week, always at odd hours. I also found a burner phone in his gym bag with texts to an unknown number. "She's still not suspicious. We're close." Close to what? Bankrupting me, stealing my identity. I felt like I was drowning, but I kept up the act, kissing him goodbye each morning while plotting my next move. A week later, I hit a breakthrough. I'd been digging through Mark's old emails when I found a thread from 2 years ago, before the money started disappearing. It was between Mark and my older sister, Claire. My heart stopped. Claire and I hadn't spoken in years. She'd always been jealous of my life, my marriage, my stability. The emails were cryptic but devastating. "She doesn't deserve it, Mark. We can split everything 50-50 once she's out of the picture." My sister, my husband, they were working together to ruin me. I cried for the first time that night, locked in the bathroom, muffling my sobs with a towel. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was personal. Claire had always resented me ever since we were kids. She'd called me perfect, like it was an insult, hated that I'd escaped our dysfunctional family while she stayed stuck. But Mark, I thought he loved me. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe. I needed help, but I couldn't trust anyone close to us. That's when I remembered Ethan, Claire's ex-husband. They'd divorced 3 years ago after Claire cheated and drained their joint account. Ethan had always been kind to me, even after the split. I found him on LinkedIn, sent a vague message. "Hey, can we talk? It's about Claire." He called me within an hour. We met at a diner 2 towns over, a grimy place with flickering lights and sticky tables. Ethan looked tired, his brown eyes shadowed, but he listened as I spilled everything. Mark, Laura, Claire, the money, the emails. His jaw tightened when I mentioned Claire. "She did the same to me," he said, voice low. "Emptied our savings, lied about everything. I thought it was just her, but if Mark's involved. He trailed off, then leaned forward. I've got something you need to see. Ethan pulled out his phone and showed me a folder of documents, bank records, emails, even a recorded voicemail from Claire admitting she'd taken care of their finances. He'd been gathering evidence for a lawsuit but never followed through, too broken to fight. I can help you, he said. I know how she thinks, and I want her to pay. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone in this nightmare. We became an unlikely team. Ethan had a friend in IT who could trace financial transactions, and I used my design skills to organize our evidence into a timeline. We confirmed Laura was no ordinary financial advisor. She was a fixer, specializing in hiding money for shady clients. Mark and Claire had hired her to siphon our savings, tank my credit, and frame me for fraud. The plan was to leave me broke and disgraced while they split the profits and disappeared. The worst part? They'd been forging documents to make it look like I was the one embezzling from Mark's company. The deeper we dug, the uglier it got. Claire had been feeding Mark lies about me for years, planting doubts about my loyalty, my spending, even my mental stability. She'd convinced him I was a liability, that he'd be better off without me. I found a draft email from Mark to his lawyer, outlining a divorce plan where he'd claim I'd been unfaithful and financially reckless. The irony made me sick. Ethan and I spent 2 weeks building an airtight case. We hacked into Laura's scheduling system, thanks to Ethan's IT friend, and found proof of her meetings with Mark and Claire. We got bank records showing the offshore transfers, emails linking Claire to the forged documents, and even a text from Mark to Laura. Make sure her credit's destroyed by next month. Every piece of evidence felt like a knife, but it also fueled me. I wasn't going to let them win. The plan came together fast. Ethan suggested we confront them publicly, somewhere they couldn't lie their way out. Mark's company was hosting a charity gala in a week perfect. It was a fancy event, all his colleagues and clients in one room. I'd been invited as his plus one but hadn't planned to go until now. Ethan and I decided to crash it with our evidence, but we needed one final piece, a confession. I baited Mark first. Over dinner, I casually mentioned I'd gotten a weird notice about a credit card I didn't recognize. His face went pale, but he recovered fast, blaming a bank error. I pushed harder, saying I'd hired a forensic accountant to clear things up. He laughed it off, but I saw the panic in his eyes. That night, I recorded him calling Laura on the burner phone, frantic. She's onto something. We need to move faster. The gala was on a Saturday, held at a swanky downtown hotel with chandeliers and overpriced wine. I wore a red dress, bold enough to hide how nervous I was. Ethan was there, posing as a guest, our evidence on a USB drive in his pocket. Mark was schmoozing, oblivious, while Claire hovered near the bar, smirking like she'd already won. Laura was there too, all business in a tailored suit. I waited until the speeches started. Mark was at the podium, charming the crowd with his generous donation to the charity, funded, I knew, with my money. I stood up, heart-pounding, and interrupted. Sorry, everyone, I need a moment. The room went silent. Mark's smile froze. I held up my phone, playing the recording of his call to Laura. His voice echoed. She's onto something. We need to move faster. The crowd murmured. Mark stammered, trying to laugh it off. Babe, what's this about? I didn't let him finish. I projected our evidence onto the screen behind him, bank records, emails, texts, all laid out like a courtroom exhibit. I narrated, voice steady. My husband, my sister, and this woman, I pointed at Laura, have been stealing from me for 2 years. They forged documents, ruined my credit, and planned to frame me for fraud. Chaos erupted. Claire tried to bolt, but Ethan blocked her, holding up his own evidence of her past scams. Laura went white, muttering about lawyers. Mark just stood there, mouth open, as his colleagues stared in horror. I saved the best for last. A voicemail from Claire to Mark, gloating about how easy it was to manipulate him into betraying me. The room gasped. Mark's boss, a no-nonsense guy, grabbed him by the arm and whispered something that made him flinch. The fallout was swift. Mark was fired on the spot. Claire and Laura were escorted out by security, and I later learned they were arrested for fraud and identity theft. Ethan's evidence tied Claire to multiple scams, ensuring she'd face serious charges. The offshore account was frozen, and I worked with a lawyer to reclaim what was left of my money. It wasn't all of it, but it was enough. I moved out the next day, crashing with a friend while I rebuilt my life. Mark tried calling, texting, even showing up at my work with apologies, but I blocked him. Claire sent a half-hearted email blaming everyone but herself. I didn't respond. Ethan and I stayed in touch, He's become a good friend, someone who gets what it's like to be betrayed by the people you trusted most. Looking back, I'm not the same person I was 3 months ago. I used to think love meant ignoring red flags, trusting blindly. Now I know better. I'm starting over, designing a new life on my terms. The gala was my moment of triumph, not because I destroyed them, but because I took back my power. I walked out of that hotel with my head high, knowing they'd never break me again. AITA for exposing them so publicly. I don't think so. They wanted to ruin me in secret. I just made sure the world saw who they really were.